Hey guys, Kellen back with Inside Out Precision, and today we are reviewing the highly anticipated Mathews Vertix. This is a new 2019 model. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, but today we're going to do a rundown by the numbers with both a 29.5 and a 28.5 inch draw, just like in our Traverse video. So, technical side of things first. This bow is 30 inches axle to axle, so 2 inches longer than last year's Triax. The new cam system is called the switch cam, and what they mean by the switch cam is that it has, just in the modules, the ability to change between a 60, 65, 70, and 70 pound draw length. So without moving the limb bolts at all, I can throw on the same length, draw length module in a 60 pound, and it'll peak at 60 pounds, and then I can adjust down from there. So I can also make it a 65 with a module, a 70, which we have here, or 75, and then again, use the limb bolts to fine tune it if I want to pull 72 or if I want to pull 62. And the benefit of that is that, again, most limbs are most efficient in the bottomed out position. So being able to change your peak weight between hunting and maybe an indoor bow or a 3D bow where you don't want to pull 75 pounds for 50 arrows in a row, you can put it at 65 and still shoot your limbs bottomed out. So really cool technology with that. Looks really similar to the cross-centric cam, but the cross-centric cam will not take these modules. So slightly different. You've got a little deeper channel here in the back, and just a slightly different shape, but real close. Has a 6-inch brace height, so real consistent with like the Halon 32 6 and the Triax, which was also a 6. Mathews seems to have done a really good job in making a really forgiving bow, even at what would be considered a fairly short brace height at 6 inches. So I've had a chance to shoot this a little bit. It lives up to all the hype in terms of smoothness and quietness. It's just dead in the hand, very quiet bow. When we were talking to our rep before we got these in the shop, he was saying, yeah, it's similar to the Triax, but we've actually made a bow that's quieter and smoother. And we kind of laughed at it like, yeah, I'm sure you have to say that, but we didn't, kind of took it with a grain of salt until we got our hands on this thing. And it actually is a little more dead than the Triax in the hand, and it is quieter. There is very little noise with this bow, which you'll be able to hear later when I'm shooting through the chronograph. One thing that I did notice is the geometry of the riser compared to the Traverse has a lot more reflex in it. It's real similar to the Triax. It still has the 3D dampening system, just like the Triax and the Traverse, and it also has their new grip. So if you didn't see the Traverse review, this new grip is, they've increased the angle slightly. They also increased the throat of the grip here is a little bit deeper. So if it's sweaty, if your hand is sweaty or it's raining outside, if you come up into that grip, your hand cannot slide up any further than that shelf will allow. Whereas on previous models, like on the Halon and the Triax, that shelf was pretty shallow, and I noticed that if I didn't dry off my hand or dry off the grip, sometimes my hand would slide up a little bit further, which puts different pressure on the grip, thus, causing a potential miss downrange. So really nice grip, still textured. Their idea behind this grip was to eliminate as much torque as possible, and I feel that they've done a pretty good job on that. Still have the roller guard with the reverse assist. Pretty well balanced bow. It just out of the box. Obviously I have a stabilizer and a sight on here, but it doesn't have kind of the top heavy feel that some guys complained about in the Halon 32. I personally didn't feel that way with the Halon 32, but that was something that you'd hear when you're watching reviews and whatnot. So really cool bow from Mathews. I currently have the 70 pound mods on here. This one is set at 29.5 inches. I will say that we sold all of our left-handed bows, and I'm a left-handed shooter, so I'm gonna look kind of stupid shooting this right-handed, but I can still pull it. And for chronograph purposes, it doesn't really matter what my form's gonna look like. We're just doing this by the numbers. So I'm gonna go set up the chronograph. We'll hop out to the range and we'll run some arrows through this. All right, so we're here at the chronograph. I've got Mathews Vertix here set up at 29.5 inches. These are the 85% mods, and it's at 70 pounds. So the first arrow I have is a FMJ 300 This arrow is coming in at 502, so for those of you who like to shoot a real heavy arrow, this should give you an idea of what kind of speed this can shoot. So 502. Oh, feels weird right-handed. So 278, that's good speed. For that heavy of an arrow, that is really good speed. The next arrow I have is a 485 grain arrow. This is actually one of my personal arrows. So let's see what this does. .282, so only a 4 foot a second jump, even though it's 17 grains lighter. So that's a pretty efficient cam if it's shooting a, almost a 20 grain heavier arrow at only 4 feet a second slower. The next arrow I have here is a 445 grain arrow. Again, this is a really common weight for most guys hunting. Lots of people are going to be between that 420 and 450 range. So this should, for those of you shooting an arrow in that range, this should give you a pretty good idea of the speed. 294. So that's moving. That's really good speed. That's going to have a lot of kinetic energy. You get really good penetration with an arrow like that. So the next arrow I have is a 417. A little bit lighter than I would shoot, but a really common weight. So let's see what she does. 303. So over 300 with an arrow coming in just over 400 grains. That's impressive. The next arrow, this is a much lighter arrow than I would recommend for hunting. Personally, this is a 360 grain arrow. So real common weight for like 3D and target shooting. Let's see what this does. 323. So that's some serious speed. You're not gonna miss much with a 323 foot a second arrow. So I'm gonna go throw on the 28-inch mods. I didn't have 28.5. We've actually sold through them all. So I'm gonna go throw on the 28-inch mods and we'll come back and do the same thing. All right guys, I've got the 28-inch mods on. Again, this is 70 pounds, 85% let off, 28-inch mods. This is the 502 grain arrow. So the first one was 272. Let's see what an 1.5 inch of draw does. 261, so 11 feet a second slower. Still not bad for 28 inches and a 500 grain arrow. 261 is still really good speed. So this is my 486 grain arrow, 485, 486. Here we only jumped 3 feet a second between the 502 and the 486 last time, so we'll see what the difference is here. 271, so 10 feet a second with only with what is that? 17 grains difference, so pretty significant jump. Next one is going to be the 445 grain arrow. So this is a really common hunting weight for most guys these days. Most people are going to be in that 420 to 450. So for you guys out there that are shooting an arrow somewhere in that range, this should give you a really good idea of what kind of speed to expect. .282, so 28 inches, 445 grain arrow going 282. That's impressive speed. That's gonna have a lot of kinetic energy. Gonna get really good penetration, flat shooting. That's impressive. This is now the 417 grain arrow, so just a few grains lighter than the previous. Let's see what we jump to. .294, so the last one was 302 with that arrow. So we dropped 8 feet a second, but still an arrow over 400 grains at 28 inches going mid 290s that's fast. So here's the 360 grain arrow. Definitely, again, lighter than I would personally recommend for hunting, but very common weight for a 3D arrow. So this is a gold tip, just XT. This is a 400 and it's cut right at 28 inches. So 312. So that is some serious speed. You could misjudge a target by 4 or 5 yards and still hang a 10, no problem with speed like that. So again, I'm really impressed with this bow. It is so smooth and so quiet. Even with a really light arrow, this thing makes hardly any noise. And we're out on the range here, which is cement floors and drywall, so it's kind of an echo chamber. But outdoors, especially in a hunting scenario, this bow is, you're gonna have very few deer jump the string with this bow because there is very, very little noise. So again, really solid bow. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I would highly recommend getting down to your dealer and trying one of these out. I have yet to meet anybody who shot it and said, not for me. Most guys put in an order shortly after shooting this bow. So really cool lineup from Mathews this year. If you haven't seen the Traverse video before, go ahead and check that one out. It's a pretty good comparison between this and the Traverse. And remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Please feel free to comment. We love feedback. We love any suggestions, or if you want to see a bow that we carry reviewed, we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, remember, precision is a decision, and I'll see you on the range.